Hello, and welcome back to WABAN, the movie and TV show podcast where an expert on the subject discusses things with an average viewer. I am your host, Nim, and I am joined here today by Kurt Russell.
I forget who that is.
He's like the main guy.
McCready?
Yeah, McCready, yeah.
Just like, I don't remember actors. Oh, God.
I mean, he's like the most famous actor in this movie, definitely.
The only one I really know is Keith David because he voices stuff.
Which one is he? He's the
Childs, I think.
Yeah. What does he voice?
Oh, so I know him from the Saints Row series. It's like his voice is very recognizable in it.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's probably some other stuff too, but
yeah. So, anyways, we watched John Carpenter's The Thing. You specifically have to refer to it as John Carpenter's The Thing because there's another movie by the same exact title that is all a prequel to this movie. You know, because that's how you name prequels, right? You give them the exact same title, yeah. And it's actually interesting. The history of this movie is actually interesting because originally, well, it's sort of based on a book, but also sort of based on an older movie, which was from like the 50s, which was called The Thing from Another World, was the movie.
Right.
Both of those movies. So this one is actually apparently more accurate to the book because the original movie, The Thing from Another World, didn't have the whole like imitation aspect with the alien. It was like it was like an alien they found in the Antarctic, but there was something else with it. It's different. I don't know. I've never seen that movie.
The main premise wasn't there?
Yeah. But apparently this movie that John Carpenter made is more close to the book, the original book that they were like based on, kind of. But
right, okay.
So it's like kind of a remake of The Thing from Another World, but more so a remake or more so an adaptation of the book than a different adaptation of the book than it is a remake of the original movie. I don't know.
This is kind of confusing.
Yeah, either way, it's a really good movie. One of those rare cases where a movie that's like a remake is like actually good and better than the original. From what I've heard, again, I haven't seen the original, 50s movie. So yeah, your initial thoughts? I've seen this before. This is the second time I've seen it. But what are your initial thoughts on this?
So, okay. I'm not really into horror all that much. I've told you this before. Like, I don't do well with jump scares, and I just don't like them.
Yeah.
But this, I don't know, this is the kind of horror that I like, where it's like directed at the characters and not at the viewer.
Yeah, I could see what you mean, where it's like the characters are in a horrifying situation, but it's like difficult situation, but it's like not.
Yeah. It's not manipulated so that like the viewer is the one that's being targeted with the scares and not the characters.
Yeah, and in a way, like, you definitely can get that sense and that feeling of horror and dread that you're supposed to get from a horror movie. But like, again, you said you don't really like jump scares. This movie doesn't rely on jump scares, right?
Yeah,
which to me, whenever a horror movie relies heavily on jump scares, it's like very cheap, kind of stupid way of like scaring people. Like, oh no, like a thing popped out. I jumped. Like, yeah, anyone can do that.
I'm going to hit the obvious red button. Boop.
Yeah, exactly.
Success.
It's like, okay, yeah, you scared me, but like in the most obvious, easy way. Like I the way I look at a good horror movie versus like a bad horror movie is like a good horror movie sort of helps slowly build like a sense of dread or a sense
Mm-hmm.
of like unease in the viewer. Whereas a bad horror movie, again, relies on just, whoa, look at this crazy thing, or like this crazy or like look at this jump scare, or like look at this crazy gore. Like this movie definitely has gore effects
Oh
and
yeah,
stuff,
yeah, definitely.
but it doesn't rely on them. Like the main, like they're there to, they definitely add to the movie, I think, because obviously you're gonna have this alien sort of transforming into human like people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense. You're gonna have like some
Yes, like the
crazy
warped
effects,
flesh and
right?
like the bubblings and whipping tendrils. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
makes sense for the concept.
yeah. But like the gore effects aren't there to scare you necessarily. They're there just because it makes sense with the story, and also like, you know, they're only used when they make sense to be used for the story. It's not like a
Mm-hmm.
constant gore fest. Um, yeah, yeah. I think
Not like SpongeBob, where the walls will ooze green slime. It's like, why though? What's
they
happening?
always do that.
Yeah.
Wait, they always do that. Oh, that's funny. I literally just watched that episode of SpongeBob yesterday. No, just gonna say that. That's funny.
Okay.
um, so was it yesterday or the day before that? I don't know. It's the past few days. But
Mm.
either way,
It's Halloween. They show the scary episodes, obviously.
right, right. Well, I was watching it on like actually going through it, like the episodes.
Oh.
Yeah, only the first like 3 seasons, because that's all that's really any good. But
Yeah, you didn't actually watch it as a kid, did you?
no, but my girlfriend did, and she got me into it. So yeah. But yeah. Anyways, back to The Thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, this is a movie that does a good job of I think a good horror movie sort of takes a specific situation or a specific sort of concept and sort of lets you sit with that concept. Like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
this movie, a lot of the unease and unrest with the characters is because of the simple concept of this alien that can like perfectly imitate other life forms. So
Right. Yeah,
therefore,
like this
you're in,
paranoia
yeah,
inducing idea of like, you can never be sure that you're safe.
yes, you don't know. One person in this room might be this deadly alien that's going to try to kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is that, and I think it's a smart thing that they don't make the alien too like powerful, right? They don't make it like
Right.
impossible to kill or anything like that, because that would kind of ruin the premise. Because if the alien was impossible like to kill, the alien would just not even try this subtle approach. It would just go out and start killing the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then the entire concept is ruined because it's
Right.
like, yeah, I can just kill these people and,
Easily, right? Yeah, because like the alien, it's because it seems like the aliens tend to be, when they like turn back into their alien form, they're kind of like horrifying and grotesque looking and like whatever, but
mm-hmm.
they're like kind of slow, and like there's enough time for you to react and like kill
Right.
it typically.
The transition between their disguise and them being able to kill you is very slow, and you can react to it if you have the chance.
Which is why they typically, so the idea, I think, is that the aliens are sort of like, they're only going to reveal themselves when they're like alone with somebody, or what I mean, like, which is why anybody not becomes one of the aliens, but anybody who comes, like any of the imitations that come out, they happen while somebody is like alone, with
right.
with one of the aliens.
If they weren't, then the other person would be able to react.
Yeah, exactly.
Stop it, or
right, because it's like
spread the information.
Right. But I really like that concept though, because it sort of creates this, again, constant sense of unease between the characters, where they don't know who to trust. Because I feel like it's interesting that, like, I think that's one thing that is like a very horrifying concept, the idea of the people that you know and trust suddenly being untrustable.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like suddenly there's no way you can trust anyone. That is like a terrifying thought.
Right, as if,
right?
Your one safe haven, or like, the few places where you can actually relax are now gone.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like having somebody to rely on is such an important thing in a situation, like a horror situation, but you really can't rely on them. But they kind of have to,
Right. There's the constant thing in that movie of, the doc could be infected. Okay, but he's the doctor. We need him.
Yeah, and it's like we'll listen to his like ideas of like how we might be able to determine, but yeah, it's interesting because and apparently a lot of these scenes, and I remember hearing this one time that a lot of the actors in certain scenes didn't even know who was an alien and who wasn't.
Oh, that's a good idea, though. Honestly, from like the
Right.
director's standpoint,
so that the actors still have that level of confusion.
Where they can't be like, oh yeah, I, know, out of character, and it, if they did, that might affect their acting in slight ways.
Yeah, exactly, and it's
Metagaming kind of thing.
Yeah, it's. I think it's really cool how they do that. And it's interesting because I think it's presented in a way where, like, not only do the aliens mimic how you look and everything, they can also like access your brain and memories.
Right.
It seems as well. So, to the point where there's literally no technically no physical difference between one of the aliens and the human. So the only real ways you could determine is, let's say if you found the person's dead body, right? And which actually, no, I think the aliens usually consume them, so they usually don't leave any.
It won't even happen. Yeah,
that's true. So,
I remember Childs asking everybody like, okay, if I was an imitation, a perfect one, how would you tell? And my brain's like, okay, you couldn't tell physically because they're perfect, but there's like a whole terrible Wolverine movie about how Deadpool gets his brain destroyed, and when he regenerates, he's no longer Deadpool because none of his memories regenerated. So that was what my brain was thinking. They wouldn't have the memories, but it seemed like they did. So like, oh,
right, because the people who were aliens were talking as if they were the same person, and it seemed like they knew everything that So, right.
So they mimicked the people, not in the same way that we regenerate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like perfect imitation.
Yeah. Which I think is yeah, it's I think
I've just made this connection. This is so similar to the game Parasite.
Okay.
You literally, it's like an awesome 3D beat 'em up, but you literally, like, anybody that you kill and consume, you gain their memories and like abilities and stuff. And it's, I don't know, I love the game. It was, well, some of it's kind of crap and some of it's like way too difficult in some places, but I should definitely get you to play it sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Yeah. But yeah, no, I think this is definitely a movie that does horror right, where it's like, again, it's the slow building of the sense of dread, the slow building of it. Like it opens literally just a simple thing. A dog is running. People are in a helicopter trying to shoot the dog.
Yeah,
doesn't tell
really
you
weird.
why. You're like, poor dog.
Why are you? It's like, are you trying to protect something? Are you just hunting for sport at this point? What's happening?
And then obviously the people who are trying to kill the dog can't speak English, so they can't be like, hey, yeah, this dog's a freaking alien that's going to try to, we have to destroy it.
Yeah, as soon as they land it and like, the guy blew up the helicopter immediately, and like as well as his like partner in the helicopter,
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like shouting at the people and like still shooting at the dog even when there's people in the way. I was like, okay. Like before it was just weird. Now this guy definitely knows something that none of the others
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Like something's bad.
Well, yeah, and obviously these, one of the guys gets shot, and so obviously these guys respond with, "Okay, we got to defend ourselves. Let's shoot this guy."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it starts with something simple like that, and then sort of the discovery. They go to this Norwegian base and try to find out what happened, and it's like they start to make these connections, like they're like this like weird misshapen body thing they found that's clearly not human has perfect exact human organs. Wait, what? Like,
It's like, okay, if this was human at one point, how did it turn into blob person?
how is this? Yeah. And then like I think it's also interesting to sort of see the different like reactions in a situation like this. Like some of the characters tend to be a more like passive role where they just kind of sit back and are like, okay, I'll listen to the person in charge and follow what they're going to do, whereas like Kurt Russell's character takes charge immediately. He's like, all right, this is what we're going to do. All right. And then, or there's like a character like the one guy in the one moment, he suddenly just becomes paranoid thinking any of these, and he runs to get a shotgun just to be able ready to defend himself. Like you kind of see everybody's sort of reaction, and like the doctor who initially was doing the like study of the cells and stuff was like who came up with the whole thing of like, oh, the chances of, if this gets out to the population, the chance, how long would it take for the entire world to be infected or whatever.
And he just goes around destroying all the methods of it escaping.
Yeah, anything, right? And
which is like, yeah, smart guy. He probably like saved the day on that one.
But like at the same time, maybe he could have like went and communicated to everyone else before going crazy and doing that. Yeah, but then again, he didn't know who to trust.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's the other part of it.
Yeah, as soon as I like put together a concept of this, I was like, okay, so worst case scenario, they just make sure everything in the vicinity dies, and then problem solved. Like sad because nobody survives, but
right,
no apocalypse.
But the thing is, they could do that, but the problem is, obviously, each person doesn't want to die, right? Like individual person, because yeah. That's natural for a human to be like, we want to survive. And their thought process was, all right, we're going to try to find a way to determine who is one of these things and who isn't. Kill all of them, burn every part of them, and leave only the humans left. And so that way we can at least serve some of us, as many of us as possible can survive.
Right. That would be the best case scenario. You find a test that can determine it. You section off everybody who isn't and, destroy them down to the molecules.
Yes.
But if you can't do that, then...
Yeah. It's interesting, too, like it's kind of interesting, too, like the end of the movie, closer to the end, the alien apparently decides to, as far as we know, or as far as they determine, it decides that this is like a lost cause. Like it's not, all the methods of escaping are destroyed. So it decides, all right, I'm going to freeze myself and wait for somebody else to find me.
Right. Like, well, because it knows about the rescue team that's coming.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, if I can just freeze myself until that happens, the rescue team will dig me up, and then I can, fresh start. Nobody knows about me then, and I can just do nothing.
Maybe in that case they would bring the body, the frozen body, back to some civilization somewhere else, where it's easy,
place where it's not contained. Yeah,
because if you think about this scenario, in a way, humanity is kind of lucky that these aliens landed in like Antarctica, where there's not like large population.
Yeah, if it landed in New York, we're dead.
Well, right, exactly, because like there's no way you'd stop it at that point. But yeah, because like if you think about it, like it landed thousands of years ago, and when it landed, there's probably literally nobody even in Antarctica at all. So
Right, yeah.
it took until some Norwegian people dug it up and thawed one of them out that it like
And
they
realize that they screwed up massively.
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That was a weird thing, because like they were going through the Norwegian base and how it was like, all destroyed and everything. And my thought when they were burning down their base is like, wait a second, this is probably like exactly what the Norwegians did. Because like that's
Mm-hmm.
probably how their base ended up like that in such a short amount of time.
Right, because they were probably thinking like the same thing, like we need to destroy,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, any
Which
remains of it.
which my thought was like, okay, is it gonna work this time? Are they doing anything different at all? Is this doomed to failure?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think yeah. Well, part of what led to them figuring this out. So like there was remember they found the remains of one of the aliens,
Right.
like the
Well,
weird
because
disfigured one, and they brought
yeah,
it back so they could study it.
well, they killed the one that was hiding as the dog, and then the
Right, and
scientist was like,
burnt
"Oh,
it
these
completely.
cells are still alive from the dead body," and then everybody starts to panic, and shit
Yeah.
gets real as it like actually starts to take over people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing is like they're like, okay, they destroy what's left of that one that they find, and then at that point, it's like maybe we've destroyed everything of it, but maybe so it gets to a point where they have no clue if maybe the alien's gone completely and
Mm-hmm.
they've completely won already, but maybe they didn't. There's no way of knowing because one of these people could be
Right.
a
Even at the very end, like he burns the big mass of it, and that comes to attack him.
yeah. Right, and then he
And it's
goes
like,
up and he finds Childs there, and it's
mm-hmm,
like the two of them are just sitting there at the end,
surrounded by
alive,
fire.
and neither of them know if the other one is is the real one or not.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just kind of how the movie ends, you know. Just them sitting there, like knowing we're probably gonna freeze to death because there's no power at this place anymore. Everything's destroyed, so there's no way
Or
that
the fire will get to them first, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they're also just kind of sitting there waiting for each other, like sitting there watching each other, just in case one of them is the because if one of them is the alien, they might try to kill the other one, but like they're
Mm-hmm.
just gonna sit there and kind of watch each other. They can see
Yeah.
what happens.
I don't know. That ending was weird to me because, like, if one of them was the alien, the like just sitting there and waiting for the other one to die, like that would work. That would work with their plan to freeze and then get discovered by the
Right.
reinforcements or the
Because
rescue team.
clearly the aliens have the ability to like survive being frozen, right? Whereas
Mm-hmm.
like a human typically, it doesn't would be frozen to
Not
death.
realistically, no.
No, no. This is, humans
Yeah.
can't just freeze like Captain America. Although Captain
Mm-hmm.
America was a super soldier, so I guess that makes sense. He wasn't like he was superhuman. But um yeah, so like but the aliens clearly have the ability to survive being frozen for
Mm-hmm.
thousands of years
So,
and
like, even assuming that the fire didn't get to either of them, and they just both like died of hypothermia, hypo, yeah, hypothermia. Uh, then if one of them was the alien, then they would be just fine, and their plan would have succeeded, and everything they did would have been for nothing. So I was very confused about that.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. Um
It's like,
but
okay, maybe you just want to make sure that you both burn to death. Like
yeah.
that is horrible, but just in case, because like you don't have the liberty to test right now, so
Yeah,
and you
yeah.
both are gonna die anyway.
Yeah. But I do kind of like the ending though, because it's kind of like this open-ended ending. Like maybe a few minutes after the credits roll, maybe he did, maybe because Childs had a flamethrower and McCready didn't. Maybe he did burn him to a crisp and a few minutes later. And it turned out, you know what I mean? Like maybe he didn't. Maybe both of them are safe and just end up freezing to death and they were both just human and it was fine. Maybe they both freeze, but one of them was human, one of them was alien, and that alien gets discovered later, and then the world gets destroyed. Who knows?
Yeah,
anything.
It's like a non-ending. It's like, I don't know. I can get the appeal of it, but it's just kind of like, but no, do the thing, do the smart thing, and fix it. Don't let it like destroy.
Yeah.
You've done all this to try to make sure that it doesn't get out, and now you're just gonna like leave this open-ended to potentially let it get out.
Well, it's interesting because it's like you think about it. So, like the thing is, in this final scene, McCready doesn't really have any weapon with him, right, at the moment. It was, but Childs does. He has the flamethrower. So, if Childs is the alien, would he use the flamethrower and kill him?
I mean, he could, but he wouldn't need to. And it probably also like put him at risk because he's revealing himself then.
Right. But if he's not the alien, would he use the flamethrower just to make, because he knows he's not the alien, but just to make sure, just in case McCready is, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a weird one too.
But he seems like the type of character who's very careful about like murdering someone in a way. Because remember earlier, McCready shot the one guy who's like pulled out his knife because he thought, whatever, he shot him. And then later on they did the test and found out that guy who had the knife he shot.
Oh, right. And he was like, that makes you a murderer.
He's like, that makes you a murderer. Childs is the one who said that, right? So he's a little bit, weary of that. So it's interesting. I don't know. It's just interesting to think about like maybe if he did it, like burnt McCready to a crisp, not knowing whether he's an alien or not. Maybe he would have had and feel terrible and have this extreme guilty conscience.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. That previous scene, like using that previous scene as context, kind of makes it like, yeah, if he wouldn't leave that to chance, he would make sure before.
Yeah, exactly.
Tried it.
Right. Like he doesn't want to die with a guilty conscience, kind of maybe. But again, it's an open-ended thing where maybe a few minutes after the credits rolled, maybe he thought for a second and decided to actually burn him to death. I don't know. Like you're kind of, it's kind of this thing where it's like any number of things could happen.
Right. I do also like how, like, in the beginning when they first discover all this, that absolutely none of them can be trusted, right? Because like you can go into detail and things, okay, like this person was never alone, this person was never alone, but that gets vague at a certain point and you're risking a lot if you're wrong. So everybody knows they can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
But then, they discover, yeah, if we use untainted blood, we might get a reaction. Well, then the untainted blood is, destroyed. They can't use it. And finally, McCready, figures out that he could just, put a hot needle in their blood, and if it reacts like a monster, then they are the monster, it's fine. I kind of like that moment because it's like, okay, they're making progress towards their goal. They actually have a method of knowing, like for certainty. They don't have to be paranoid anymore. And they go through it and they kill off the one, or I guess it was two at a certain point, but they burn them. and they're fine, and they just have to test the one guy who wasn't there. But I like how when they went to do that, like that was like a respite, right?
Yeah.
It was like just a lull in the action before, oh, the one guy that you were going to find is gone, and he's clearly infected, and he's unaccounted for.
Yeah. Which is interesting because it's like you're thinking about it and you're like, if they had never like left him locked up in there by himself, because that happened pretty early on in the movie, if they had never done that, things might have went better.
Yeah.
Like it's but again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you can be like, oh my gosh, if only the characters didn't make this decision, but like at the same time, it's like this whole like, hindsight is 2020, right? Like in that moment, that was the decision. Locking him up made the most sense because he appeared to be a danger to everyone else, right? He was going crazy. He was, from their perspective, like, we're going to lock him up and we're going to figure this shit out, and they can maybe let him out later. Not realizing that was probably not a good decision.
Oh yeah, like he, I don't know. In all likelihood, he might have been uninfected when he went in there. Well, putting him in there alone is like,
yes,
yeah, he's bait at that point.
Right. Well, I think he was. My theory is that he was uninfected when they put him in there, because obviously, he was there trying to destroy any way of the alien leaving.
Right.
He was actively trying to destroy it, and he was actively trying to like figure this out, and like, so. But then at some point, somebody went, and one of the people who was infected probably, snuck off for a minute and, attacked him or whatever.
I just really liked it because it was just like, yeah, there's a lull. They know how to tell it. The end is in sight. It's like, oh, yeah, you know how to tell now, but now you got to find the last one. And because it's alone and you left one person alone and then you split up with it out on the loose nearby, now, once again, you can't trust anybody anymore.
Yeah, which that was interesting because it got to that part and I was like, okay, there's like 4 of them left, right? 4 plus the one that was missing that they were going to go find. But there's like 4 people left, I guess. And then they're going to, try to destroy the place to try to find it, but they decide to split up. Like Childs goes one way and then McCready goes with the other 2 guys. And I'm like, okay, but why would you split up?
Yeah, but why?
Like, if you have already determined that the 4 of you are not one of these aliens,
it's like,
why would you split up?
Somebody alone like puts them at risk, which means when you get back to them, you can't trust them anymore.
Right, because exactly, that's what happens at the end, right? McCready and Childs meet up again, and neither one of them can trust the other one because they weren't with, Childs wasn't with McCready. He didn't see what happened. McCready, and also from an audience point of view, we don't know what happened either. Childs could be one. Like we followed McCready, so we kind of saw that he never.
Right. I mean, I was kind of suspicious because he never tested himself. I don't think
he did.
But also, he did.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Because remember, there's that one part. He's like, now he's like doing the test. He's like, now I'm going to determine what I already know. Puts it in his blood.
Oh, that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the theory is that like they found his kind of mangled up jacket because somebody, one of the other aliens maybe did it to try to frame him or whatever. Right, I don't know. But
because he was the one that was like keeping them together. So I guess getting rid of him, they would have probably won.
Well, right, because he's the one who's sort of taking charge and leading this. Yeah.
He's also the one that figured out the method of. I guess that was later, so it might not have been an aspect of it. Yeah. But anyway.
But yeah, so, I don't know, it was just weird. Like, so for the most part, the movie doesn't have a lot of the, like, stupid horror movie, like, you know how like horror movies, people are always like, oh, people are always really dumb in horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
In this, for the most of the movie, it doesn't have that, except there's a few parts where I was like, okay. One was, again, them splitting up at the end, Child's going a different way, which is like,
split up and look for clues. No, you're gonna die.
No, stick together. In this situation especially, you should stick together.
As soon as they heard that there was an imitator that could imitate them perfectly, they should have been 3 people in a group at all times.
Yes.
One for the potential monster, one for the potential victim, and one to stop it and kill them both if they need to.
Yes. And now the other moment I was gonna point out was when they're down there in like the one area setting up the bombs and stuff to blow the place up. The one guy is off like on his own for a second and gets attacked by the like scientist guy that went missing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the one guy kind of vaguely saw him getting dragged away. Instead of
McCready.
Instead of going to McCready and being like, hey, I saw something. Do you want to go check it out with me? Like, or,
so that I don't die.
He just starts walking off on his own towards it. And I'm like,
you idiot.
Now, he was sort of seen to be like he was like probably the youngest of the people. He was just the guy who was their cook, and he was just that younger, like more
rolling around on roller skates all the time.
Right, yeah. So like he was clearly probably the least intelligent of them. Like he wasn't a scientist. He also wasn't like, whatever else. But
I guess, yeah.
But at the same time, it's like
that's just basic logic.
Even then, like, come on.
You're fearing for your life. You should do what's best for your survival, and wandering off like
towards the suspicious thing you just saw, not a good idea.
I'm gonna check it out alone so I can die.
Yeah, and I don't think did he have a weapon with him? Maybe he did. I don't remember.
Think so.
Because McCready had something, I think. No, maybe I don't remember.
Dynamite.
Yeah.
And Childs had a flamethrower, but I don't think anyone else really did.
Yeah, but
because they were like setting stuff aside because they didn't want to put anyone they didn't want the monster to have a weapon.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I just like I was watching that and I was like, why are you doing this?
I was just like, okay, now you tell McCready and you both go and kill it.
And you both go and kill it together, or determine what to do.
Explode yourselves with it.
Yeah,
and like, not wander off on your own just to die.
Right. You've been with McCready constantly since the testing, so you know he's safe. And you can trust him. So tell him, hey, I think I saw something weird over there. Now let's decide what to do about it. Let's discuss. Yeah, but whatever. Sometimes horror movies just have to have these moments.
It was also the first time the monster revealed himself in the dog cage, and Childs is like pointing a flamethrower at it and like hesitating to pull the trigger for a while. That was fine because nothing happens. But then the same thing happened with McCready tested the blood. It reacted, and the guy started like melting and turning into the monster. And then the one guy stood in front of it, aiming the flamethrower at it and not pulling the trigger again.
Right, because McCready's flamethrower was like not working. It was like struggling because he was trying to, and then he just was like yelling at it was Windows, I think, who had it.
Windows.
He's like yelling at him. He's like, burn it, and then he's just like panicking. I'm like, he's just standing there for a second, and then he gets killed because of it. Yeah, it's like Windows. Come on,
like you could have just all you had to do was pull a trigger, and you would have survived.
Yeah, and they would have killed it right then and there. But yeah, it's kind of interesting, like how the alien works too, where it's like each individual part of the alien is like a whole
Yeah.
organism in a way where like that can survive on its own. Like the head gets cut off, but the head like grows these legs and starts walking
Mm-hmm.
eyes and starts walking away as it's like a separate piece. So, it's like interesting. Which is
Yeah.
why, his theory about the blood makes sense because it's like, oh, the blood itself is like a separate organism
Mm-hmm.
by itself.
Yeah.
Which is
There's a lot of
interesting.
like anime and other things that do that, where it's like, yeah, you need to kill my entire like every cell in my body, or else I will regenerate. And I don't know, it's always been kind of like a cop out, kind of like, yeah, this is why I'm hard to kill because this one little detail about me. But in this situation, it's very well done.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like it's even used against the creature.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because like at first they don't even realize, and then all of a sudden the one person's like blood starts to thaw, and
Mm-hmm.
then suddenly the one guy dies, and they're like, oh, so even though the body is dead, it can like some of the cells are still alive, and it can still do something. Oh,
Yeah, which
that
is
complicates things.
that's a whole thing
Right.
too, because like if even a single drop of blood they missed, or like a speck of dust that happens to be,
Yeah.
skin flakes from it.
That could, in
Yeah.
theory, like maybe there's. I'm assuming there's a certain point where something's maybe too small, like a too small of a particle, and it's not really part of the alien anymore. It's like, or
I
it is,
mean,
but
you'd
it's like
assume,
not
but
its own
also,
thing. I feel like there would be a certain point, but yeah, for the most part, like even
mm,
just little, because
which is
like
I don't know. That's like why they use fire, right? Because it will like
right,
spread and kill it all, and until there's nothing left to burn. But
yes,
then McReady starts using dynamite, and I'm just like, that's a terrible idea. You're just gonna like turn it into like a splash effect of just infection. Because like all those bits are gonna still be alive, maybe, and then it's just gonna
yeah,
splash everywhere.
yeah, yeah. I mean it. I guess it's not like fully defined exactly how large a piece has to be able to still attack and infect somebody, right? Like,
Yeah,
okay, like a drop of blood, like a little bit of blood is still technically alive, a piece
yeah.
of it,
You've
but
even seen like he like dropped the blood on the floor, and it moved across the floor on its own.
right, but could that little piece of blood do anything to infect somebody, or is it too weak? You know what I mean? Like that's like how big would it have to be? So I feel like it's not fully defined just because I mean again, obviously the people don't know for certain
Mm-hmm.
because how because they just know what they can observe of the alien, which that's another interesting thing about this type of horror movie is like you literally don't not knowing anything about the aliens, right? Like you
Right.
don't know their intentions. You don't know. Well, their intentions are obviously to like try to infect and like spread.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you don't know like anything beyond that. You don't know why they landed there in the first place. You don't know like anything. Uh,
And you don't know
which
their actual true capabilities too. Yeah.
yeah, not to the fullest extent. You just know what you can observe. Because there's no like way you can like talk to the alien and ask it. They don't speak the same language. Well, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they apparently can learn your language, but they're not gonna. I don't know. It's interesting how it.
Yeah. It's a. Oh, what was I gonna say? But I guess because the doctor that first discovered it was like, yeah, it could turn into anything from any planet at any moment in time that that it's ever consumed, and it's just like, okay, this, I mean that is potentially the case, but if so, why didn't it just turn into some like big freaky monster that could just like tank bullets?
Well, maybe these specific ones have never infected that something like that before. in the
Yeah.
past. Also, the transformation seems to take a while too.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you don't know, which I think
Right.
is a lot of times in horror is a very
Oh
good
yeah.
thing, right?
I
Like,
think I think like the three basic fears, like the three like most feared things of mankind are like the dark, insects, and the unknown, I think it is. Or
yeah,
maybe ghosts.
exactly.
But like unknown is
So
definitely up there.
the fear of the unknown is very effective when it comes to horror movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like when you're, a really good example of that would be the movie Alien, for instance,
Oh
um,
yeah.
where
Because
it's
like you never
like
know where it is.
they never know where it is, but it's like they never even show fully what the entire alien looks like until the end of the
Mm-hmm.
movie when it's like killed, right? Um, and I don't know, have you ever seen that movie?
I haven't, but I have seen Alien Isolation, the game based off it.
Yeah, so generally, some things, but yeah, no, and like again, they're out in the middle of space too. That's the unknown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's this random alien thing that they never have like some. There's never some big speech about exactly what this type of alien is and what its goal is and what it wants and all the details about how it works. No, they don't know any of that. So it's just all they can know is what they can observe.
Right.
So it's you get little pieces like, oh, the alien's blood is like this weird acid stuff or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
then like that burns through things. You can learn little bit pieces, but overall it's all completely the unknown. And that's huge in this
Yeah.
isolation of being in middle of space, and like,
Yeah, just the idea that yeah, you've observed this, and that about it, and it can do all that stuff, and you know that. However, that's just the veil that it showed you.
mm-hmm.
Like there could be hundreds upon thousands of whatever other things that it can do, and you don't know, and you have no way to defend yourself from.
Yeah, exactly. Which is sort of in this movie utilizes that very well too. The fear of the
Mm-hmm.
unknown of like,
But yeah,
you
like
know,
every time it transforms, it's like a different thing. Like first it spits acid and all the tendrils, and then it's like, the dog head comes out at the very end. It's like this giant worm mass thing that like dig under the
yeah,
ground.
yeah,
It's like, what is happening?
yeah. There's that, and also like I think the setting for this movie works really well to add to the horror aspect of it, because it's sort of this. It's the isolation set sort of thing of
Right.
you're in middle of the Antarctic. Like, how are you gonna get help from anybody other than whoever is right here right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you have is the people right here.
Right.
And
It
oh, the
really is
power
all
goes
it.
out. Yeah, now you're gonna freeze to death. Like,
And that's what the alien wants.
yeah. So it's a very like, yeah, it's just a very sort of like good kind of horrifying scenario to end up
Mm-hmm.
in. Um,
There's also like they compound all that stuff too. It's like, okay, it imitates people, and there's no easy, fast way out of the situation. So like you, even if you like aim to get out and get help, or to like all the uninfected to get out and just spread to the world, yeah, never go there. That's quarantine zone. Just don't, as it freezes. You
yeah.
still have to make sure that none of the people that you send off are the monster. And
Yes.
so, like, doing that basically becomes impossible immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, and it sort of you kind of create this scenario where it's like no matter what happens, I feel like if you're in this situation, you kind of in your head know that you're probably not going to make it out alive.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
like, I'm probably not going to survive this. You're going to try
But,
and
like,
maybe succeed, but like, it's this interesting thing of like maybe we can find a way to survive and get things back to the way they were before. Like, but no,
Well, like, as soon as,
you can't.
like, if you think about it logically, there's like only one scenario where someone gets out alive, and that's getting a test to prove that they're not it. And then there's also, making sure that they don't get infected between the test and leaving,
Yes.
and actually finding a way out. Which
But
all
then
of that
also
is
making
chance.
Also making sure that the alien is completely gone and dead.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's
then,
just like all these compounding things.
Right. But how do you make sure the alien is completely dead without completely destroying your way of survival either? Because again, there's no power. The whole place gets destroyed to the point where, like, okay, well, as a human being, you can't just survive in the middle of the Antarctic without any like power and without a building and like power and stuff to help.
Mm-hmm. Like the only way I think any of them could have survived is if, as soon as they figured out that it couldn't like imitate people, like everyone just never left each other. They figured out a way to tested everybody, killed anybody who reacted immediately, and just like, left no room for error of anybody leaving the place or being able to infect anybody else.
Yeah.
And that's such a like, yeah, you're not going to be able to get people to do that because they're going to know that somebody else in the room is infected, and then, they're not going to want to stay in the room, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's very, it creates this sort of, and I think good horror does that. It creates this situation where there's this sense of like, there's no way out.
Mm-hmm.
You're
a caged rat right now, and so you just gotta deal with it.
It's just a matter of time before you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because like a horror movie isn't supposed to have some big heroic thing at the end where the hero saves the day, and then it's sometimes it does, but like I feel like usually if that happens, it's like one person survives, like.
Oh yeah. Isn't that what happens in Alien? Like the one girl survives to kill it, and
Ripley.
That's it.
Yeah, pretty much. And then she's like in the sequels too. But yeah, and then like I remember seeing that in the like prequel, which this was really weird. So there's a prequel movie to this that was made in 2011 that's also titled The Thing. Apparently at the end of that movie, one of the characters survives, but like goes off inside of drives away in like one of those like big yellow vehicle things they have in this movie.
Like I don't know what they're actually called, but like just the huge like mobile snow plows that they just trek across Antarctica with.
Yeah, like she kills one of the infected aliens, like the final ones that she sees, and like leaves. And then it also ends with the two people flying away on the helicopter chasing the dog, like as like a separate thing.
Oh, okay.
But it also ends with the main character, who is this woman who is like not Norwegian, from America, who came to the Norwegian base to do science stuff. I don't know.
So like there's two groups of survivors, one that then immediately dies as they encounter this set of characters,
right? Because obviously the movie would have to end with that to make sense.
For it to be a prequel.
Like, but like I'm just thinking, I'm like, watch it. Like I watched like a review somebody did of it, and they were talking about like they showed like the end where the woman survives and she like goes off. She was like the main character in the movie or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, okay, but like, what's gonna happen to her then? Like what? Like this? Like that's weird because like she never comes across the American base and tries to warn them. She never encounters like where is she gonna go?
She's just escaping on her own. What's gonna happen?
But like,
is she actually gonna be able to get out of Antarctica?
Right. But like naturally, the natural thing to do would be, oh, what's the nearest base, like human civilization to me? Oh, it's this American base over here. Oh, and also this character is American as well. She just was at the Norwegian base, invited there because she was like a scientist or whatever.
It seems like a logical next step.
So it makes it like, wouldn't she go to that base? Because again, and then
instead of trekking out into the ice alone and potentially dying.
That's such a weird way to end your like the prequel movie, because like the logical ending would be that, to make sense for like the start of this movie, would be that everyone dies except for the two that are in the helicopter.
Yeah,
chasing the dog.
Chase the dog. Yeah,
right. But it was also funny because it was like, apparently in the movie there's like some people at the base who are American, but most of them are Norwegian. But like a lot of the Norwegian people also speak English, because a lot of Norwegian people learn English apparently. Except for one. One of them doesn't speak English.
The one that survived.
The one that ends up getting shot in the head at the beginning of this movie. They just have to oh yes, he doesn't speak English. Like at the beginning of the movie.
Even the guy that he blew up moments before talking to the Americans spoke English, and he didn't.
Which, by the way, how did he mess that up anyways? He goes to throw this grenade, it just slips out of his hand. Like, whenever I watched that scene, I was like, idiot. So if he didn't do that and he threw the grenade properly, he could have ended it and saved everyone right then and there.
I don't know. I was kind of questioning whether or not he did it on accident, really, because it was like, yeah, destroy the helicopter so it can't escape. Why not? Or like maybe he didn't trust the other person.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't know, but like, to me, it definitely looked like he accidentally threw it like backwards, like he was trying to throw it at the dog. But it's just kind of funny because it's like, again, if you go based on the prequel, what the prequel set up, even the guy in the helicopter could speak English. So if he had jumped out of the helicopter in that moment, he could have told them.
Right. I don't know. Didn't they show him like try to dig for the grenade before it went off to like throw it away, I think? And then it just blew up right in his face.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, you poor boy. Maybe, like you could have maybe ran. You'd probably get out of the blast radius, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I would have done. I wouldn't have tried to dig the grenade up and throw it. Like, I would have been like, I'm getting away from that grenade.
It was like on the pavement, maybe, where you could just grab it and hook it. But like in snow, buried instantly, running.
Yeah. And then again, according to the prequel, that guy that died, the prequel movie, that guy that died, could speak English. So had he done that, he could have been like, hey guys.
Alien.
This dog needs to die. Burn it. Literally get a flamethrower and burn it right now. They burn it, and then this guy goes and explains to them what happened. And then they're like, oh yeah, so let's go see if there's any, let's go check the Norwegian base. Right, if there's any remains, we'll make sure they're burnt to a crisp and not bring them back to study. Okay, there we go. Problem solved. We all survive.
Yeah, it was just this one coincidence event of him accidentally dropping the grenade and the guy just being like, well, I guess I'll try to pick it up, even though that's stupid as hell.
But I still love that, like, the prequel has this one woman who survives. And, like, I think that she's set up as, like, the type of character who would be, like, who would, if she knew that there was a base that close, to, like, go help and, like, let them know. Or, like, it just, it's just, like, okay, why would you have a character like that survive in a prequel movie? It just raises all these questions.
Yeah,
that don't make sense and doesn't add up.
She's the only one that survives and drives off. My brain's like, oh yeah, she was the kind of person who just like, yeah, I survived, I'm fine, I'm getting out of here. Like, that's all I care about.
But like, I mean, I haven't seen the movie, but like, from what I have seen, she seems like the type of character who would be like, hey, I got to go warn these people. But also, again, that's probably the only other bait and the only other human civilization anywhere near where she is that she could actually get to.
And Antarctica's huge.
Yeah.
It's a continent.
And if that's close enough for you to get to, like that's where she would naturally go. Like there's no way they don't know that there's a base that close, right? Like they definitely
Right.
know. And she's American, so she knows that it's an American base and that she could communicate with them. Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no reason for her not to go there, and yet she still doesn't.
that's like, and again, if she did, she could have helped solve this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, I think what it is like they created this main character and they didn't want their main character to die. Even though the main character surviving doesn't make sense with the original
or
movie.
at least, well, right, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have, like, just, like, popped in, like, hey, there's another base in this direction, and I'm going to go there to warn them.
Yeah. But
that would have solved it.
Another thing about the sequel or the prequel movie is apparently it doesn't. So you know how like this movie is very like slow building, subtle, like, and it has a lot of those scenes where it deals with the very subtlety of like who's one of these the alien just kind of slowly infect without people knowing who they're infecting. It's
or
like
without even the viewer knowing.
Yeah. Apparently this movie doesn't do that at all. Apparently like the aliens just kind of like reveal themselves very often and seem to be more powerful than in the other movie. Like they're able to kill people easier. Like, so which it's just completely different to where it's like I don't know.
Like they've gotten a rebalancing and suddenly the game is entirely different.
Yeah, but like it feels like from what I can tell, it feels like it's a more like generic monster movie than the original. Whereas the original is a very unique, interesting, well put together, like it's a really good movie, I think. You know, I love John Carpenter's The Thing. I think it's a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's pretty good. But there's
I think it's yeah. I mean, as far as horror movies go, I think it's a really good one. You know,
yeah, definitely.
All the acting is great too. I have to say that too. I don't think there was any acting moments that were not good. Like I think everything was very believable. The writing, like the dialogue writing and everything was all really good as well. Like it all felt very real and natural. Like everybody's sort of reactions for the most part felt very natural and realistic and they felt like real people, not movie characters, not like, you know.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on any of that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think the movie did a really good job with all that kind of stuff, which definitely helps when you're doing like a horror type of thing to make your characters feel like real people.
If they react horribly to a monster, then it's just going to be like, I'm immediately taken out of the action.
I want him to die right now anyways. Like there was like one like main scene where I was like a little bit like, okay, come on. Why like where the guy saw the thing and just walked towards it, like, and you're like, oh, idiot.
don't go towards the monster that's gonna kill you.
Right.
That's the bad.
There was only really one moment where I was like, oh my gosh, you're an idiot. Like there was only one moment like that for me, for the most part. So like, I think the movie's really, really good generally at that. And and again, there's not really any like jump scares, like cheap jump scares. It's mostly the very slow building of suspension, the very, slow building of that feeling of dread that you're supposed to feel during a horror movie. And yeah, so very effective, I think.
This kind of makes me realize maybe this is why I don't like horror games, because like all horror games are pretty much jump scares.
Yeah. Which is, there's probably good ones out there that aren't.
Yeah.
But it's definitely probably not as common, But one horror trope that I really hate though, that's in some like bad horror movies is the jump scare that's not even like a real scare, where a fake jump scare. Like it's one thing if the actual monster pops up to kill you and it's a jump and it makes you jump. That's one thing. But
But
like
like,
when they're like there's a scene and it's like it's very like ominous. And you're like, oh, something's gonna pop out, something's gonna pop out, and it's like jump scare, and you're like, oh, it was just their friend pretending to be a monster, jumping, like
right.
scaring them. You're like, really? Like that's so dumb. Or
Or
like,
like a cat like
yeah.
whizzing by at Mach speed or something.
And then it's like, and then all the tension from the scene is just suddenly gone, and you're like, okay, that's all it was. Whatever.
It's like, God damn it. You
Uh,
couldn't even. Ah,
I saw a scene from the Thing prequel movie, and apparently there was a scene like that where it was like this guy was like looking at like one of the alien things, and it was like this ominous, and then all of a sudden he's like jump scare, and then it was just like his friend jumping behind him, going boo, like
really?
really.
Really? Why? What does
That's not
add to
even
the
the
scene?
real thing. Like, but the problem is like, well, when you do that, it like suddenly gets rid of any of the tension you were building in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it just suddenly dispenses all the tension, and you're like, okay, cool. You know, yeah,
Yeah, it's like they built all that up just for that.
yeah. It's ridiculous. But this movie, The Thing, really doesn't have any of that. I don't think.
I
So
mean, yeah. I mean, I don't remember a single jump scare. Like, there's like half jump scares, I think, where like the music stings or gets something really loud happens or something.
well,
But
yeah,
it's
but there
never
was
like,
never like a moment where it was just like, oh, that was designed to make you jump. Because
right.
again, like a jump scare to me isn't really what horror should be about. Horror is, again, it's about you have that slow building where it's just everything, all of the visuals and the story and everything, the way everything's done just sort of gives you this general feeling of dread or the slow building of suspension that's like as you're watching it,
mm-hmm.
not this like occasionally there's a monster that popped up. Whoa, like
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels like a cop out to me when it's just jump scares because it's just like, yeah, that's the way your body reacts. You can't
when
help that. That's
something
not
random
clever.
jumps out in front, like that's the easiest thing scare to do.
Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I'm gonna push your head on the water and you're gonna drown. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, that's the way the body naturally reacts. It's like, yeah, you can't even be like, oh, this movie, they got me. Like, yeah, it's not hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like I could make a video with a jump scare easily, that makes a lot of people jump if I wanted to,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I have a lot more to say about it.
Yeah, I think we've gone through it.
Pretty much. We've gone through that, and I even told you about the weird prequel, 2011 prequel to it, which I originally, when I saw, thought was a remake, but then I found out it was a prequel, which is, again, so weird because it's the exact same title.
If it has the exact same title, why wouldn't it be a remake?
Yeah, typically that's how that works. Well, it's kind of like how, like, Halloween, the Halloween series, there's like, so at one point they did there was like a remake in like the early 2000s or something of like a few of the Halloween movies, but then recently they made a movie that's technically supposed to be like a sequel to the original, or like a sequel to a few of the originals. I don't know, like some of them aren't canon anymore, some of them, the whole Halloween franchise is just weird, like how what's canon, what's not. It's like, whatever. But anyways, it's like the newer Halloween movie that's supposed to be technically like a sequel to the original Halloween movie that came out a few years ago, and it's titled Halloween. Like,
My God.
it's a sequel. If it's a remake, sure, but it's a sequel. Like,
yeah.
And then recently they just came out with another Halloween movie, Halloween Kills. But like the one before that is like, I was just like, it's just like so weird. It's like, why?
I've always found that kind of stuff annoying.
Like, well, it makes it confusing too, because
exactly.
You
like,
think
what order do I watch this in?
You see the title and you think it's a remake, but it's not.
Like God of War series, the chronological order and release order is not anywhere near the same. And like they all have different names. It's like, okay, what do I play it in? And like, there's God of War 1, 2, and 3, but then there's a ton of stuff before and after and in the middle between them. And then they suddenly came out with God of War again.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this is kind of a remake, kind of a sequel. It's like reboots, I believe it's called, but it still has like all the story elements from before. It's just a continuation that you don't actually need to play in the previous games for.
Yeah.
So it's just like, okay.
I feel like generally speaking, unless it's a remake, it shouldn't be the same title. Like if it's another movie in a franchise that like comes after or before a previous movie in the original movie in the franchise, why would you give it the same title? You know, I don't know. Maybe they could have called it The Things. I don't know.
The Things.
Plural. I mean, kind of like how the sequel to Alien is Aliens. You know?
Really?
Yes, Aliens is the second Alien movie. And then it's Alien 3 and whatever, but the second one is Aliens. Because the first movie, they're only worried about one alien, but the second movie is like a bunch of aliens. And it's like more action-oriented, I think. It's like more of an action movie than a horror movie. But
okay.
Supposedly,
weird.
Yeah. But, yeah. Anyways, I think we're about ready to close.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Anyways, thank you, everyone, for listening to our discussion on John Carpenter's The Thing from 1982. I really like the movie. It sounds like you like it, too, so that's good, too.
Yeah. There's some weird parts, but it's like, yeah, overall, I like it.
Pretty good. Good concept. Everything. Yeah, so thank you for listening to WABAN. There are multiple places you can listen to this podcast, that being Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Breaker, Pocket Casts, and Radio Public. Pretty soon you will be able to start listening to it on the WABAN YouTube channel, which I will leave a link to in the description of this podcast. The WABAN YouTube channel will have content start being uploaded on it very, very soon, actually. So we're going to re-upload all of the previous episodes of the podcast there. So if you want a video version, if you want to listen to the podcast on YouTube, you can do that. But we're also going to be doing some gaming videos, which should be up, I believe, within the next week or two.
I'll try. I think so.
We'll try. They might, we'll see. Either way, there will be a link in the description, so you can at least click on that and subscribe, so you're ready for when stuff is there, or if stuff's already there by the time this is out. I don't know. We're still working through that. But yeah, so we're really excited about that, and yeah, I don't really have a lot else to say other than subscribe to my YouTube channel, Nim TV. I'll try to leave a link in the description to that as well. And I feel like there was something else for me to say. Oh, yes. There's a new episode of the WABAN podcast every single Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. That's when you can expect a new episode. Next week, we are going to continue our discussion on Death Note and actually finish the show. We have 12 episodes left or so. So we're just going to watch all of them and discuss that and the conclusion and to the show and everything next week. So we're both really excited for that. And the week after that, we are actually going to have another guest, a return guest. Our first guest we ever had was Parks, who's from the channel Our Tour, and he's going to be our guest again in 2 weeks. So it's been a while, so we'll kind of do just talk about anything that's different from then. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. We're really excited for that, and then yeah. We'll see what happens after that. We're not sure exactly what's going to happen the week after that, but you will find out then. But anyways, that's what you can look forward to on this podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And yeah, goodbye, everyone.
Bye bye.